My parents immigrated to the United States from Poland through the diversity visa lottery in 1994, a year after I was born. Because they hadn't acquired a place to live, a car, or a job, they deemed it necessary to handle matters alone. Their heightened sense of responsibility as immigrants from a reduced country influenced their decision to leave me behind. Consequently, as they set off for America with 2 suitcases each and a lack of livable language, I encroached on my grandparents' privacies. For 6 years, I replaced my mother as my grandmother's child, becoming the subject of her gatherings and letters. Because my parents hadn't taken me with them initially, their only choice was to file an I-130 petition for alien relative form, thinking it would take a couple months to process, which perfectly matched their timeline for settling into factory jobs in a Chicago basement. The petition filed in 1994 finally processed in 1999, falling victim to an incessant backlog of I-130 applications, the number of them far exceeding the number of visas allotted in a given year. I entered the skyscrape geography 5 years late, a month before starting the first grade. In Stigmata, Escaping Texts, Helene Cixous says, "One must enter the labyrinth of a text with a thread, not unlike the spool of red I received in Sunday school as a child, the one metaphorically attached to Jesus at one end." I fell hard into America, leaving behind a thread that has over the years pulled and knotted in the space between my past and present self. Similarly, when readers tie a loop around their waist and jump in, they cause the affixed gas station nozzle to pee, puke, cum, cry, spill on their shoes, into their tanks, their capacity to go. Readers confirm stories based on their chosen imaginations. They are the biggest influence when it comes to what comes. The thread that electrifies these pages receives its volty and ampy, cute synonyms for scientific words, from a migration that started at birth yet didn't transport my physical body. Everyone knew I was in the process of leaving and felt at liberty to discuss my new home. During religion class in kindergarten, the priest compared my upcoming journey to those undertaken in the Bible. Will you forget? Sails unfurled over the open sea. My extended family and I lived in a leaving economy. A tiny farm town a couple hours south of Kraków, next door to one another like ducks in a row. Except we didn't have our ducks in a row. My grandparents owned one of 4 cars in town, purchased with my grandfather's cleaning up after the Vietnam War, meaning with a blast that invalidated his ability to hear in one ear. Day after day, he drove women in labor to a hospital occupied by doctors who cared for their patients only when paid extra under the table, and back to a secular cloister fit only for inland mermaids. Family structure standardized. Wife tended to the home, and husband worked abroad for months at a time, visiting only to bring back meager pay and a dose of his sperm, funding another child to tend. Although the number of families who emigrate as a unit has grown, back then my parents were an anomaly, or 2/3 an anomaly. In a common physics analogy involving water, current means flow, and voltage means pressure. Here the thread flows through a comforting muchness, looking to guide, but also pressure. Familial memory governing a country never in its own hands. Polishing regards Poland in the same way italics regard Italy. Barely. The colors vary, and I begin. Holy literature, noun. Written by half-breeds whose parents are different countries. People with holes in their breeding is literature that's not safe from the wind. Society forces half-breeds to patch up their holes, Americanize their breeding, especially in the telling of stories. Yet birds do not adapt their song to location, as chirpy and off-tune as it may be. Half-breeds write their forces, stories, holes, change their stories from off-tune holes. Literature forces song on location, off-tune by off-breed who tells its holes. Except in migration, many songs go unsung. A doll, a letter, a coat, some money, a letter, some winter, letter, boots. My parents send my grandmother a letter. She sends them letters of the alphabet they forgot. English doesn't parallel their absurd physical choreogeography. They send them back, having no use for letters. On my 18th birthday, they hand them over in a faded brown envelope. Here is the childhood we experienced. Loved children, how does time take 2 months to finish kissing you at the airport? I don't take walks anymore. I don't have the time. Even when your father watches her, even when your brother, I don't attach to destinations. Give to you and your brother. He returned from Germany on Saturday. Your daughter gave him a big kiss and called him Nunu. You see how it is. Children, I try my best to be a parent, but please let me know if you have any recommendations as to what I should give her or how I should act. She's thinning into quite the graceful child, yet slimming her further might take some time kissing, as I don't want her to starve. We're in the city often, can buy all kinds of fruit, but her mood risks for a banana, and other times she says nietzsche. Oftentimes she uses this nietzsche. Listen, I purchase whatever I think she'll eat. A piece of chocolate, not too much, but however much fruit, and juices blended with old boiled water. Your money holds strong, so don't send any dollars as long as she's healthy. She handles the road well, points out the window until someone finally answers cow, or that's a dog with all the cows and all the dogs. R left for Germany, called a week later complaining about the conditions and pay. I helped Kay sort product for 3 hours and found a winter overcoat. For her, I gathered what fell in my hands, but they really didn't have much for children. To sum up the family visits, everyone thinks she's a well-behaved, smart, pretty girl, but you know that, and besides, your father has always called his granddaughter Nai Nai. Sincerely, W. I don't want to strip you of your mother tongue, just around your tongue, because I worry you'll pass your grandmother's writing. Make language mother linear. Grandmother, do you sound like a terminal illness? Sometimes it's fun to joke. Dai mi loda means both give me ice cream and give me a blowjob, but other times I want to stay in my woods, in my single meaning of wood, which is hard when I know 2 languages to quadruple meaning. And people say, let in only one language, a trench code to the floor. Grandmother, do you sound like a terminus, either end of a railroad line? Your daughters find safety in movement. On October 3rd, 2016, tens of thousands of men and women boycotted work and school to protest the latest Stop Abortion bill. The bill was proposed by Poland's ruling Law and Justice Party to further restrict the country's already harsh abortion laws. Streets and cities across Poland, including Warsaw, Kraków, and Wrocław, filled with black. From clothing, umbrellas, signs, and smoke. Surprised by the unprecedented size of the crowd and echo protests in Brussels, Berlin, and London, lawmakers backtracked. Parliament rejected the proposal. Another black protest happened in 2018 when the party came out with a revised version of the bill. Czerń. All Polish colors are entities, adjectives but also nouns. Their job, like a human has a job, is to describe objects. Czarny chair, czarny tail, but they themselves are entities, czerń. English is deficient in colors with a soul. They become redness, pinkness, or yellowness, which no one ever says. Why did English makers stop at ness? They weren't able to imagine anything better to name the noun, not even an amputated version of the adjective, like pin for pink or yell for yellow. In Polish, różowy, pink, an adjective and a noun, also becomes róż, pinkness, a noun. That's why in Poland, the black protest is less a protest where people wear black and more an entity, blackness, that wafts into the tenant. If 10 women wear a black dress, they're equally important. If 10 women wear a red dress, they blend in. You learn this on The Bachelor. To try to understand, you listen to the heart of a television and that of a vagina, red and porch-like. When the screen is black, the news is the same. Viewers consider it of equal importance. If vaginas, however, looked and felt the same, what if women had the ability to choose their vaginas based on what felt good and impressed sexual partners? They don't like wearing the same dress, so imagine the horror if they chose the same vagina. Quote, sexuality is not the most intractable element in power relations, but rather one of those endowed with the greatest instrumentality, useful for the greatest number of maneuvers, and capable of serving as a point of support, as a linchpin for the most varied strategies. End quote. Michel Foucault, The History of Sexuality. Except how they use those same vaginas, those instruments, would still differ wildly. Let's try a different analogy. Gloomy weather, something flying over something else, shadows sneaking in before true nightfall. Your grandfather paces to the end of the driveway and back again, on the lookout for thievery by the sky. He's more afraid of storms that come from the west, hills there, and then suddenly a red streak of light, or something else red, unexpected, like blood and stool, shrieks in front of his vision. Shock, a call to the police, a doctor maybe. There isn't supposed to be red in a storm, or, for that matter, a mushroom. Black already blends in. Red is meant to stand out. Too much red blends in. A lot of black stands out. Colors are not transitive verbs used with object. Perhaps then, black doesn't need ness to have a soul, and the prerequisite for soul is to not come before an object. Blue is like black in that there's strength in quantity. You write in an entirely blue room in a medical school, and you're not kidding about the floor and the chairs and the cubicles and the walls and the light waffles. You cannot open your kettle because it's too not blue. You because you're not conforming blue. Roller coaster blue, the color a container for stress. Not many things are naturally blue except, of course, the sky, the water, the hottest part of fire. As a result, English makers, when they got to the blueberry, decided to highlight blue, even though the blueberry is only truly blue when you squint at a freshly picked basket in energetic sunlight. In Polish, blueberry is jagoda, or borówka, a regional difference, neither of which index the color blue. By this logic, the black protests emphasize the scarcity of the color black in politics. Not enough anarchism. Conceivably, the protesters were black for silence, because silence creates new surfaces for reconditioning. And you are the one brainstorming hypotheses about the map of creation, as if the black were an abstract memorial constructed by a sly architect. Or they wear black for bold, like a mole springing up somewhere unwanted in one of the body's many meadows. The mole is bold, goes where many tattoos do not dare go. It directs many gazes to it, gazes that revere its bravery, but work to move it slightly off-center to better fit the eye. As with vaginas, there's a dressing room for this too. People try the protesters on, and they try them off. Does squinting at a single blade of grass on a table illuminate more about grass than watching it grow outside? Your grandmother asks you to cut the grass before you leave the country, but you forget. This illuminates more about guilt, which you'll get to later. Black, the idea of it, has to first form in someone's mind, one person's, unless two people think of it simultaneously. Chimneys, ones that stare at each other, must think alike in black. Hey, what about black? No, too city. We don't want to scare the villagers. Even people who come up with colors for a protest must face rejection, you think. Less than chimneys, though. No one likes a chimney. But there's no need to be scared. Everyone knows just as little as you do how air travels without a passport. And some animals aren't all that intuitive. Take, for example, a cat that will not pass through a hole when the flop is down, even if you drive its head through it to show it the way. No entrance, blacked out, end of story. Does sexuality lead to fertility? Evolutionarily, the more sexual a woman is, the more chances she has to get pregnant. So shouldn't we admire high doses of sexuality? You learn a lot on The Bachelor. But having a chance at showing off one's fertility doesn't match actually being fertile. Just like having a chance at showing off one's dance moves doesn't necessarily prove one's talent for dance. Next. Black packaging is for sleek packaging. Black clouds are for bad clouds. Asphalt absorbs radiation and emits it as heat due to a low albedo. While it may sound like libido, the Latin root is albus, as albumin, the white of an egg. So you agree with the first part. When women are made to absorb too much toxicity, they emit fire. But it's not because of a low albedo. You stumble upon a blog titled The Barren Years. Its author talks about getting to the point in her infertility where she has started to speculate whether the color of her underwear affects her chances to conceive. The comments on the post chronicle many experiments with colored undergarments. Someone asks if plaid works. Black doesn't make the cut. If it were up to you, the most fertile color would be blackberry. Such a supple color, grasping sunshine in fists. Grows into late summer when the world releases an egg and welcomes you to vacation in its heightened basal body temperature. When lightning strikes, because what first comes to mind is something phallic, the blackberries sing a tune. Even the young ones that look like brains wish the rain luck. A few months later, a natural spring of blood drips, drips. You wish your period came in snow. Pre-morning, a sting swimming between your ribs. You can bait it with a single thought, a thought that acts, that laments the passing of time. You have been pre-mourning your grandparents ever since your grandmother nonchalantly asked whether you wanted to see their reserved graves, as if what they reserved were seats for a flight across the Atlantic. Did they choose the window, plot with a view, or the aisle for accessibility? Definitely not the middle. Middle one only during sleepovers when you were little, as a guaranteed safety from supposed intruders. At the time, you reviled the morbid question, but recently went looking for the plots yourself. Maybe seeing them in person would plant them in the past, even temporarily, or rather lurch them far into the future. You did this on the off chance the surreal couldn't be real. In the end, they stayed put. You go to Europe for a year to be closer to them. Your unemotional cousin, who lives in Germany, a more conveniently traversed distance away, but is on a stint in California working as an au pair, texts you when you're with them. How are they? She asks. But how is their health? Your mother staggers for the phone whenever she dreams about them, assuming her dreams are winning lottery numbers clicking into place. You leave, not knowing what the reasons will be behind your next arrival. The protesters pre-mourn. You have not yet taken to wearing black because, unlike the protesters, you pre-mourn specific people. A uniform color would target them. This reason, yes, fits like a glove, all the while missing the hand.